Steve Cortes, I want to go around the horn real quick because Bradley said tech bros. And I just want to, since it's the beginning of the year, I want to do just a quick round robin. Do you think by the end of the year that there is a fissure within MAGA world among tech bros, Elon, Vivek, others, and the MAGA base?
I'll give you sort of a split answer here, and I'm not trying to be cute, but this is what I really believe. I don't think there will be a broad split. I don't. In other words, I think that this coalition will remain intact despite some significant differences on issues like immigration. However, when it comes to the individual personalities, I do believe at some point Elon Musk and President Trump probably do have a rather significant falling out. I think it's going to be difficult for the two of them to maintain a close relationship over time. I'd love to be wrong about that, but that's my projection.
All right. Anybody else different? Because I agree with Steve on this. Bradley or Caroline, I just think at the end of 2025, we're not hanging out at Mar-a-Lago together. Not me, but him.
Steve is exactly right on the Elon point. That is the one that scares me the most, because Elon Musk, he is the honey badger. He don't give a bleep. And if that goes sour, it's going to go sour in a bad way. I will say the reason that this coalition not only won, but can coexist despite its differences is because Trump's populist appeal is twofold. One is economic, and that's where we face some of those differences on immigration, right? It was your sons and daughters have been sent to war while your jobs have been shipped overseas, and you've been screwed. Let me come back in there and fix it. The other side is actually a resurgence of civil liberties populism, which is why you see the focus on free speech, particularly in the digital public square. You see the resurgence of patriotism. You see the anti-iconoclastic tendencies, kind of forming together, right? Trump's like, I'm going to build every statue that they've torn down. I'm going to rebuild them. And congratulations, left. The statue of Robert E. Lee just got 10 feet taller. And so that's kind of what holds it together. And I think Trump, if he gets worried about the tech bro flank, he can retreat to a place of restoring civil liberty, of civil liberty populism, the type of which we've seen, of course, many presidents in the past retreat to when they're trying to hold a governing coalition together, whether that was Bill Clinton in the 1990s or Abraham Lincoln in the 1860s.
All right, I want to shift to politics for a second. Caroline, there's something that I don't understand going on in the left. James Carville wrote this op-ed. And he says Kamala lost because of the economy. And I feel like James Carville, who coined that phrase, "It's the economy stupid," needs to get a new one, which is "It's the candidate stupid," right? That I don't understand all these stories that come out and nobody will say she sucked. She was a horrible candidate. I don't understand. I mean, to me, Washington, D.C. is so good at blaming people. And yet she wasn't good. Biden showing that he can't handle going out the door. But yet no one will say it. I don't get it. What is the problem on the left? Why can't they? I mean, to me, that's the cop-out answer. I actually think if our policies are great. She just sucked. Why can't they just say she was a bad candidate?
Sean, I think to admit that Kamala Harris was a bad candidate would mean that they would have to confess up to Nancy Pelosi's grand orchestrated plan not working, the ouster that she engineered did not work, and also that the DEI candidate idea didn't work. I mean, Kamala Harris was a woman of color. She was a woman. This was supposed to be a golden combination that would give her a fast track to the White House. And obviously that's no replacement for competency and for, articulation of the ideas and the priorities of the American people. So yeah, it's a serious blind spot that they can't see just how insufferable she was to most Americans, including independents. But, on the economy, that is, I think, at the end of the day, it was the most fatal part of their platform because there was such a degree of gaslighting behind it. I mean, you would just see the Fed data come out and, clearly inflation is tempering, but it's still there. So even though, the rate of inflation had slowed throughout the end of Biden's term, and they would insist in statements to the public that, don't you feel better now that inflation is lowering? It's like people don't care about macroeconomic indices. They care about the sentiment on the ground. What do they feel when they go to the grocery store or the gas pump? They feel malaise. They feel hamstrung. They feel suffocated. They feel like they can't afford their children's future. They can't afford today. They're mortgaging the future to afford today. And so at the end of the day, all of this kind of, abstraction talk with the economic, defenders, like, I just, there were so many of them. It didn't matter. It didn't matter because people were truly unhappy and they were hurting. So, and that was most damning for them at the end of the day.
Steve Cortes, it wasn't just Kamala Harris. The left still doesn't admit what's going on with Joe Biden. Yesterday, Joe Biden was on Meet the Press. Now, I rarely get my mind blown, but I think Kristen Welker lost a bet because she asked Chuck Schumer a question. And I think it was like literally because I had to rewind it. I'm like, I think I might have heard that wrong. There's no way they're holding Democrats accountable. I want to play you this. It's a minute long, but I want to play you the whole thing because I don't know that we'll ever hear this again on a Sunday show where they'll hold them accountable. Let me play you what Kristen Welker said to Chuck Schumer about Joe Biden and then have you respond to it. I'm going to play you the full minute. Let's go.
I want to play you a little bit of something you said last year. Take a look.
I talk to President Biden, regularly, sometimes several times in a week, or usually several times in a week. His mental acuity is great. It's fine. It's as good as it's been over the years. All this right-wing propaganda that his mental acuity has declined is wrong.
Leader Schumer, what do you say to Americans who feel as though you and other top Democrats misled them about President Biden's mental acuity?
No. Look. We didn't, and let's look at President Biden. He's had an amazing record. The legislation we passed, one of the most significant groups of legislation since since Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, putting in 235 judges, a record, and he's a patriot. He's a great guy. And when he stepped down, he did it on his own because he thought it was better not only for the Democratic Party, for America. We should all salute him. We should all salute him.
Do you feel, as we have this conversation today, that President Biden could serve another 4 years had he stayed in the race and potentially won?
Well, I'm not going to speculate. As I said, I think his record is a stellar one and he'll go down.
All right. Steve Cortes, have at it.
Look, every word uttered by Schumer there was a lie. Yep. Literally every single word. Number one, everyone knew that Biden was incapacitated a long time ago. And when I say everyone, I don't mean just insiders. I mean regular citizens. If you regularly consume political media, regular people of any kind of common sense knew that we had an incapacitated president. And we still do, by the way, for 2 more weeks, which should worry all of us into this home stretch. But also the biggest lie of all that Schumer told there is that he made this decision himself. All right, that is complete malarkey. No, he was forced out in an internal palace coup. He was forced out. And so there's 2 huge lies here, by the way, that are conjoined. The first lie was that Biden was fine. Once that lie was exposed by Biden on live TV at the debate, they had to scramble and do something. And then the second big lie is that Kamala Harris, who had to be the substitute candidate, she simply had to be. Why? Because she's the vice president and she's black and a woman. And that combination of forces for the left, for the Democratic Party, meant that she must be the replacement candidate. But the second grand lie was that she earned that spot, was that she should have been the vice president of the United States. No, she was selected purely for reasons of immutable characteristics. In other words, only because of her DEI credit score was she the vice president of the United States. So to some degree, by the way, it's beautiful, and it should be satisfying to some degree to those of us on the political right that these twin lies came back and completely trapped the Democratic Party to the point where they couldn't win. I think they would have lost, of course, with either candidate. The reality, of how well President Trump did and how much the American people yearned for a return to the prosperity and security of the Trump era. But nonetheless, it is somewhat delicious that they got trapped by their own lies.
Caroline, the thing that I think was interesting is the first question she asks him is, did you mislead us? And he doesn't answer the question. He says, look at his legislative record. Look at the number of judges. That's not what we're talking about, right? That was a sleight of hand. Look at the shiny nickel. Look at the number of judges he's appointed. What does that have to do with his mental acuity? And then when she asks him, as a follow-up, would he have served better for the next 4 years? Well, if you think he's still sharp as a tack, that's an easy question. But he says, I'm not going to speculate on that. What's so hard? If you stand by your initial statement, which you think he's sharp as a tack and he did all these great things, then that's an easy one. He refuses, he obfuscates on the first one, and then he ignores the second. That, I think, it was amazing to me how little attention those two answers got.
Of course, Chuck Schumer and other senior Democratic leaders were complicit in the cover-up of Biden's cognitive decline, and they colluded with legacy media to ensure that the public was in the dark about just how bad Biden's functioning was, because it was prudent for the Democratic Party at the time to keep this puppet of a president in office. They thought it was their best chance of defeating Trump until the whole lie, the whole myth was just busted wide open at the debate, like Steve said, and they couldn't cover it up anymore. It was just too glaringly obvious, and anyone with eyes could see. It was just plainly, an observation that this man was an empty vessel. But that's not to say that, there wasn't this serious kind of psychological operation that Chuck Schumer was very intimately involved in to pull the wool over the American people's eyes and push through this guy that, couldn't even stay awake in meetings with international leaders. And it just shows you how, truly, when the Democrats want to consolidate power, they will go to extreme lengths. They will do anything. They will do anything. And the GOP tends to be a little bit more ethical on when it comes to stuff like that. We try to have more integrity, but it's just incredible that he is doubling down, even though, at this point, like, the history books will not be kind to anyone involved in the latter months of Biden.
Bradley, last night, Biden is at the White House, and he yelled at, in respect to the comment that Chuck Schumer said about his next 4 years, I want to just give people a preview of what he said last night to some of the reporters gathered there at the White House for an event that he was holding. Let's take a look.
By being the oldest president, I know more world leaders than any one of you ever met in your whole goddamn life.
This is he is bitter, man. What is up with the lecture? I know more people than you guys do. What is this? Like, I'm wondering if he's just pissed that no one's writing great things about him anymore.
Sean, I've said it before on your show. I'll say it again. Post-coup Biden. I love this guy. This guy is a psychopath. It's fantastic to watch in real time. He makes for great TV whenever he steps up to the microphone. I wish we had more of this President Joe Biden before the palace coup. Going back to Schumer's comments, so what this all really tells me is that Congress is a nursing home too, and nobody is actually sharp in the Senate. Mitch McConnell's freezing, Nancy Pelosi's falling down, Kay Granger's in a nursing home, one of the top appropriators in Congress, and Chuck Schumer can't figure out that the president of the United States mentally isn't there. So I guess they're all kicking the bucket as well. But real talk here. Of course, Senator Schumer knew exactly what was going on. Of course, Senator Schumer was behind it. And this is why the only reason kind of we know all the dirty details is because Joe Biden and his loyalists are leaking them. Joe Biden and his loyalists are realizing that they are going into retirement and they can take a bucket full of BS and hand it to the Democratic Party and say, here, have fun with that for the next 4 years. Have fun with that in 2026. Have fun with that in 2028. It's awesome. I love this version of Joe Biden because Joe Biden is very bitter about this whole thing. And you know what? He should be, because he would have done better, not maybe in terms of the popular vote, but he would have done better in the places that mattered for the 2024 presidential election than Kamala Harris did. I think Donald Trump wins either way, but if you're approaching a union worker in Michigan or Wisconsin and you're asking them, hey, what's Kamala Harris's bona fides and looking out for your interests? They see a hyper-progressive California liberal. Whereas for Joe Biden, there's a reasonable argument that can be made if you're on the left to say, hey, union worker, President Joe Biden is going to be looking out for your interests. So love Joe Biden. I think we should he should have a podcast It can be called malarkey or something like that. 95% of it is just going to be him
he
mumbling.
Do a podcast? This guy
No, he'll just be.
He can't get up for the day. Steve Cortes.
No, it's an hour.
It's
an hour, and he just needs to make 2 cogent sentences.
He can't do an hour show all year. It's a 1 year he couldn't get an hour of content in. Steve Cortes, today, obviously, President Trump got certified, but we wouldn't have certified him had we not had a speaker. Johnson went through several, machinations to get it on that first ballot. But I always love the concession speech that the runner-up, in this case, Hakeem Jeffries, gives. I thought he went on way too long. It's like, dude, hand over the gavel and say whatever. But he couldn't help himself. He talked about election denialism.
Right.
I want to play you the clip and then just show you a quick tweet on this.
Thank you for that very generous applause. It's okay. There are no election deniers on our side of the aisle. You see?
Okay. That's just not true. Not only are there several election deniers on his side of the aisle, he's one of them. Look at this tweet right here. The more we learn about the 2016 election, the more illegitimate it becomes. America knows to know whether we have a fake president in the Oval Office. I don't know why we let them get away with this. I mean, it's not just Hakeem Jeffries. There's a ton of them that have objected, that have said Trump was fake, that Russia interfered. I mean, Hillary Clinton, on and on and on. To me, this is like, how do they get away with this?
Right. Well, we can't let them. I mean, to your point, and you're exactly right. Hillary Clinton, is the OG of election deniers, right? I mean, the actual loser, the certifiable loser of the 2016 election, has never accepted that she legitimately lost, even though the Mueller report, after tens of millions of dollars, after endless media hand-wringing, the Mueller report determined that not only did the Trump campaign not collude, but no Americans at all colluded with the Russians. None regarding the 2016 election. So we can't let them get away with it. We have to call them out when they spew this kind of ridiculous nonsense. It is proper, and in fact, I would argue a very American tradition to be skeptical about election outcomes from either side.
Yeah.
But this idea that there's election denialism that exists only on the right is simply an absurdity. And by the way, on this day, let me also say, do many of us still have serious qualms about the conduct of the 2020 election? Absolutely, we do. Now, do I think it's profitable for us in a political sense to be pushing that theme still? Probably not. No, in 2025, I don't think it makes a lot of sense. However, I also will never shirk away from the reality, as I see it, that 2020 was, in fact, deeply flawed. Thankfully, we had, I think, a very clean election at the end of 2024, and we're going to have a President Trump, and I hope after that a President Vance, and do a lot to save this republic of ours.
Yeah, and I hope that we remember the lessons and we don't take our foot off the pedal, so that we keep making reforms in the right direction. Guys, thank you all for being with us. An amazing panel discussion today. As I mentioned, Congressman and former Navy SEAL Derek Van Orden. Tomorrow with Seb Gorka, we're going to get a lot of insight into China, TikTok, the attacks in New Orleans and in Vegas. So much to break down with them, so don't miss an episode. Hit that that subscribe and notification button. As I mentioned, a lot of great stuff at SeanSpicer.com. Sign up for the newsletter there. We appreciate you kicking off your week with us. Hopefully the snow ends here in the D.C. area. We'll see you back here tomorrow on the Sean Spicer Show. Thanks for being with us.
Well, if you enjoyed this content, make sure to like this video, subscribe, and click the notification bell to get more.